that back. He'd gotten some criticism even from Republicans for that being a potential irresponsible move, a move that was too geared towards, as some Democrats criticized Patel in this hearing, him trying to take an early glory for the FBI, despite the fact the investigation was nowhere near concluded. But I can tell you that the Republican senators I talked to emerging from that hearing, and that's the audience Patel really needs to talk to here, say they're satisfied with what they've heard out of the FBI director. I just caught up with John Kennedy, Republican senator of Louisiana, and I asked him, does he think Patel is doing enough to acknowledge that mistake in the early hours of the Kirk investigation? And Kennedy said he does believe it was a mistake, but he believes that Patel was trying to err on the side of transparency. Yeah. But if he could do it all over again, potentially he might do it differently. But he was satisfied with Patel's explanation. I also asked Kennedy, was he satisfied with Patel's explanation of some of the mistakes, as Republican lawmakers have called them, that the FBI and the DOJ made in the early months of the Trump administration about transparency when it comes to the Jeffrey Epstein saga? Because Patel and others during the campaign repeatedly said that they promised that they would release the FBI's so-called Epstein file when they come into office and say essentially, they are there. And Kennedy told me, again, repeating a little bit of what he had said about the Charlie Kirk instance, that mistakes were made, and if they could do it all over again, perhaps they would. But he was satisfied with what he was hearing out of the FBI director in his hearing.
Alex, what can you tell us about what Patel's saying here in terms of other people potentially involved or aware of Charlie Kirk's work?
He said that they are actually actively interrogating or investigating.
Investigation. We haven't really seen Republican senators bring that up. They've asked him about the Kirk investigation, but they haven't really asked him about the criticism that was being said. Senators take this opportunity to echo what we've heard out of the president and accuse, as the president has said, the radical left, as the president often says, to be to blame for Charlie Kirk's murder. Also, the part of the other side from Republicans like House Speaker Mike Johnson, who have called on both Republicans and Democrats to try to bring down the political temperature, despite the fact that out of the White House we've heard the president try to lay blame at the feet of the so-called left, as he says.
All right, Jay O'Brien, Alex Mallon, thank you both. And a judge has dismissed terrorism charges against a suspect in the United Healthcare CEO murder case. He appeared in the Manhattan courtroom for the first time in months, where the judge dismissed 2 counts of murder as a crime of terrorism. But the rest of the indictment remains, including second-degree murder charges, and that suspect has pleaded not guilty. Let's bring ABC Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Kaczorski, who was in court, and ABC legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer for more. Aaron, what's the latest here?
The judge said there was evidence Luigi Mangione may have killed Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare on a Midtown Manhattan street last December, intentionally, in a premeditated fashion. But the judge said there was insufficient evidence to show that he did it as an act of terrorism with an intent to move the civilian population towards certain actions. Prosecutors thought Mangione's writings made it clear that he was intending to send a wider message by killing Thompson, but the defense said that Mangione himself never publicized any of his writings. That was done by the authorities after they seized a diary that police said Mangione had been carrying when he was arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And so the judge seemed to agree Mangione kept his writings to himself and did not intend a wider message. All murder, the judge said, causes some amount of fear or causes the population to do certain things, but there was no evidence, the judge said, that Mangione intended to do anything more than kill Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare.
Brian, the judge also rejected the defense request to dismiss the state charges on grounds of double jeopardy because he faces federal charges as well. What did you make of the judge's reasoning?
So the judge's reasoning makes sense based on what we have as current Supreme Court law in this country. Oftentimes people know double jeopardy as you cannot be tried for the same offense. And that last word is very important because it's the offense, not an act. And so there's this concept called the dual sovereignty doctrine, where the state and the federal government operate as different sovereignties. And so the state can charge you with murder in the second degree, while the feds can charge you with murder as well, but there will be different offenses under different laws, and there'll be different sovereignties charging you. And so under that theory, you're not being charged for the same act, but for different offenses. And the law allows for that to occur, for both the state and the fed to have separate offenses, even though it's the same act that they're charging you for.
Brian, the defense also arguing that the contents of the suspect's backpack, a gun, a diary, and alleged fake ID, that those should be suppressed. What's the defense's strategy here, and do you think they have a strong argument for why those shouldn't be allowed in the case?
So I think let's be very honest, right? We have video surveillance of what allegedly happened here, and I think most people can see what they saw there. And so from the concept of what happened there is very easy to argue, and for the most part, this is going to be about who makes it to the jury, not necessarily the facts. But if you can make the facts better for the defense, why not? If you can suppress, for example, the diary that was in the bag, or even the murder weapon that's in the bag, it makes the defense's argument that much easier. There's a reason why we have a phrase of there's no smoking gun. No murder weapon makes it that much harder to prove a murder. And what the argument they're making here is that as a standing under the Fourth Amendment, you typically need, or generally need, a warrant to search someone, right? Now there's certain exceptions as to when you can do that. One of them being exceptional circumstances or exigent circumstances, like someone is dying on the side of the road and the person who allegedly committed this crime has the poison in their bag. You got to figure out what the poison is, and so you don't need the warrant, you can just go in the bag. But what the defense is saying is there was no exigent circumstance. The victim was already dead. There was no need to search the bag. You should have gotten a warrant. Because you didn't get a warrant, anything inside that bag should be suppressed or not allowed in front of the jury. That's the argument, and that's the strategy.
All right, Brian Buckmeyer, Aaron Katersky, thank you both. Israel has started its ground offensive to occupy Gaza City. We have seen several massive explosions across the region as the IDF steps up attacks from both the ground and the sky. The IDF says it's already started the offensive with 2 divisions and expects to bring in a 3rd soon. Now Israel's defense minister says, quote, Gaza is burning. Meanwhile, for the first time, a UN division is officially saying Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. ABC's foreign correspondent Maggie Rulli and former senior director for counterterrorism on the National Security Council, Javed Ali, are here with more on this. And Maggie, start us off with just the latest on the fighting in Gaza City right now.
No, Diane, today the Israeli army announced it had begun that long-awaited ground operation to take over Gaza City. Now, we knew this was coming, and there have been weeks of evacuation orders for people still living in Gaza City, one of the most populated areas in Gaza. Hundreds of thousands are believed to have fled, and we've been seeing these incredibly long lines of people making the journey down the coastal road to tent encampments in the south. But Diane, many have stayed, saying they fear that if they leave, they will never be allowed back.
Javed, Israel calls the report distorted and false. What stands out to you about these accusations and Israel's response?
Well, Diane, this has been a long-running, very politically, diplomatically charged issue with respect to how the UN is categorizing Israel's actions in Gaza over the past couple of years. And this report that is now claiming that IDF operations and other Israeli activities have resulted in a genocide. I mean, that is a very explosive thing to bring forward. And we've heard how the Israeli government
government has always pushed back on those accusations. They've also had support from the White House in pushing back on those accusations. But the bottom line is Palestinians have suffered greatly on the civilian side, with almost 65,000 Palestinians dead, with some number of those Hamas as well. And we've all seen the pictures of the physical destruction as well. So this is going to continue to be an issue, but what concrete changes it results in, that I'm not sure is going to happen anytime soon, even with this result and these latest accusations being brought forward.
Maggie, how are people in Israel reacting to this ground operation, and what are you hearing from the international community?
You know, Dan, actually, it was just moments ago President Trump was asked about this, and he said, quote, nobody is happy about that situation, seeming to create perhaps some distance between himself and Israel's expanded ground offensive operation. He also put pressure on Hamas to release the hostages. Now, within Israel, there's also been outrage from the Hostage Families Forum. It's believed about 20 hostages are still alive, with some being held in Gaza City. One mother of a hostage said, yesterday, Netanyahu gave the order to bomb my child. So, Diane, clearly a lot of emotion right now in Israel.
All right, and Javed, Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Qatari officials overnight in Doha. Is there any hope of salvaging these ceasefire talks after the attack there?
Well, that seems to be an important step to at least mend the U.S. relationship with Qatar. And when I was on your program yesterday, I sort of explained how that's really important for the U.S. with Al Udeid Air Base being there and all the other relationships between the U.S. And Qatar on the economic side and on the diplomatic side. But I don't think, at least right now, that it's going to bring back the prospects for diplomacy in the aftermath of Israel's strikes last week. And now we've seen the Gaza City operation is unfolding. I just don't think diplomacy is going to lead to any breakthrough in the near term.
All right, Maggie Rulli, Javed Ali, thank you both. And tributes are pouring in for Oscar award-winning actor Robert Redford. Redford's rep tells ABC News the 89-year-old passed away at his Utah home surrounded by loved ones. ABC's Rena Roy has a look back at his life and legacy.
Over a career that spans 6 decades, Robert Redford was one of Hollywood's leading men and most celebrated directors in American cinema. He was the quintessential handsome movie star who starred in classics like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, released in 1969.
Maybe. Do you?
The Sting.
I want to take over his operation, and I need you to help me break it.
And The Way We Were, sharing the screen with Barbara Streisand.
I'm celebrating.
What are you celebrating?
I got you to cross the street.
The California native's good looks and charismatic performances propelling him to fame. He also took his talents behind the scenes, winning an Oscar for Best Director in 1983 for the film Ordinary People.
Maybe you can't love anybody.
In 2016, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his significant contributions to American culture. But for Redford, it wasn't about the awards.
I'm not that comfortable celebrating myself. And there's so many red carpets, so many places that I'm more interested in what the purpose is, which is showing films.
Redford went to college on a partial baseball scholarship, reaching back to his youth, starring as a baseball player in 1984's The Natural. Though he was a mainstay in big studio movies, he was also a supporter of independent filmmakers, using the millions he made to launch the Sundance Institute and Festival in the 1970s.
Our job and our role is to create a space and platform to bring new voices and new ways of seeing the world using independent film to this place. That's it. We're not interested in the money that somebody else is using.
Rena Roy, thank you. Coming up, questions about a deadly new military strike in the Caribbean, what the U.S. and Venezuela are saying about the attack on a boat President Trump says was carrying drugs.
With Thrivent, your personal finances aren't just personal. We help your money make a difference for the ones who matter most. Because helping serve others is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more.
drug traffickers in the Caribbean. He announced another deadly strike on a small boat, killing people he says were transporting drugs from Venezuela. Now, some are questioning whether the strikes are legal. Our Chief Washington correspondent John Carl has the latest from the White House. Hi, John.
Good morning, Diane. Once again, President Trump has ordered the bombing of a small boat in the Caribbean, killing people he says were trying to smuggle drugs into the United States. This use of U.S. military firepower is unprecedented, and it's also drawing accusations that the strikes are illegal. This is the video that President Trump says shows the U.S. military strike alleged drug traffickers in international waters. He claims the strike killed 3 narco-terrorists from Venezuela who were trying to smuggle drugs into the United States. ABC has not independently verified the video, which Trump released on social media with this threat. If you are transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you. Trump says the U.S. has proof those on board were terrorists, though the administration hasn't released that evidence.
Do you plan to provide proof that these were narco-terrorists who were on their way to the U.S.?
But you don't have to see it because we have recorded proof and evidence. This comes just 2 weeks after Trump announced a strike on a different boat of alleged drug smugglers from Venezuela that Trump said killed 11 members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. President Trump is now acknowledging these strikes could have unintended consequences, such as accidentally hitting fishing boats.
I mean, to be honest about we're fishing, but I wouldn't want to go fishing. Just a nice, let's take a little trip, because I'd say, man, if maybe they think I have drugs downstairs. I don't want that.
There are renewed questions about that first strike. A U.S. official telling ABC News that the boat had turned around before it was destroyed by the U.S. military. And 2 weeks later, the administration has still provided no proof that the 11 people killed on that boat were members of the gang Tren de Aragua, or even that they had drugs. The top Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee condemned the attacks, saying, quote, "No president can secretly wage war or carry out unjustified killings. These reckless, unauthorized operations not only put American lives at risk, they threaten to ignite a war with Venezuela." But President Trump is promising more to come, saying that he will go after drug smugglers on land in just the way that he's gone after those at sea. Diane?
John Carl, thank you. Voters in Minnesota are headed to the polls for a special election to fill the seat of murdered State House Speaker Melissa Hortman. The Democratic Speaker was killed along with her husband in July in what authorities call a politically motivated attack. Now the case is back in the spotlight amid rising concerns about political violence, and Hortman's seat could have major implications for the balance of power in Minnesota. ABC's Alex Boucher is here with more. Alex, what's at stake in today's election?
Well, Diane, as you just pointed out, context here, it was just 2 months ago, or a little over 2 months ago, that State House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were brutally killed inside their home by that man dressed up as impersonating a police officer, allegedly wearing that ultra-realistic mask. Another state senator was also attacked with his wife. But what's at stake here is essentially control of the Minnesota State House. Right now, Republicans have a slight majority, a 1-seat majority, and so Democrats are hoping that this election will bring this back to an even tie. And right now, looking at this race, Democrats have a candidate by the name of XP Lee. He's a former Brooklyn Park City Council member who is running to fill this race. He's running on a platform to continue on Hortman's legacy here. He's taking on a Republican nominee by the name of Ruth Bittner, who is a real estate agent in the area. But just to kind of really highlight just how important this is for Democrats, XP Lee has been campaigning with Governor Tim Walz, trying to fill the seat.
Alex, meanwhile, Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro just gave a keynote on political violence after the Molotov cocktail attack on his home. What's the latest on his message and where this whole conversation is going?
Well, so keep in mind where this speech was happening in Pittsburgh, which has a steep history. A lot of Pennsylvanians remember the synagogue attack there. Also, it's just south of Butler, Pennsylvania, where that assassination attempt played out on candidate, Trump, over the summer last year. But this was an opportunity for Governor Shapiro to really lay into a message that he's put forth, talking about the need to dial back the rhetoric to come together, but also decrying political violence. He said that when you hear speech that you disagree with, the answer is more speech and not violence. He said that political violence tears at American society. Take a listen to more of what he had to say this afternoon.
This type of violence has no place in our society, regardless of what motivates it or who pulls the trigger, who throws the Molotov cocktail or who wields the weapon. It doesn't matter if it's coming from one side or from the other, directed at one party or another, one person or another. It is all wrong, and it makes us all less safe.
And so Shapiro there really trying to double down on this message of unity and talking about decrying political violence across the board. It's a veiled rebuff of some of the rhetoric that we've heard from President Trump since in the days after Charlie Kirk's assassination, where he specifically highlighted attacks on Republicans. Shapiro going out of his way to mark attacks that have happened on both parties, and also talking about the need for government to deliver in order to make people feel like they're actually being heard.
All right, ABC's Alex Brachet, thank you. Coming up, a new poll shows parents are skipping or delaying their kids' vaccines. Dr. Darian Sutton's here with what you need to know in the checkup.
Honey, do you want me to schedule Calvin's flu shot?
Schedule your flu shots today. Get your flu shots today. Walgreens.
In a survey of 1,000 Americans, half have less than $500 in savings. With Self, 1+ million are building credit and savings.
2026 Chevy Equinox, just $299, only at Chess Round.
shows 1 in 6 parents say they are skipping or delaying their child's vaccines. The data from KFF and the Washington Post explores parents' trust and confusion about childhood vaccines as the Trump administration revamps federal policies. ABC's medical correspondent Dr. Darian Sutton is here for more on this in our segment, The Checkup. And Dr. Sutton, always great to have you to break these things down. So what are your big takeaways from these findings?
The biggest takeaway is that there's a growing uncertainty about vaccines. Parents are losing trust in science. And Diane, as we were talking about during the break, it's more than just one shot. There's a broader erosion in confidence in the very treatments that have protected children for decades and generations. And as you stated, 1 in 6 parents are choosing to skip or delay their vaccines. That's not a French number. That's millions of children that aren't up to date on their vaccinations. And that risks reversing very much the progress that has been done in the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years for public health. And that vaccine hesitancy is not uniform. It's a mix.